the Napa Sonoma fire. Not only did it impact people's lives, it impacted the entire environment around us. It demonstrated what can happen very quickly to an entire community. And that is an experience that we just don't want to see going on around the country and around the world.
Climate change is here, it's happening, it's real. All we have to do is look around at the weather phenomenon. We're constantly setting records across the globe. Hottest days, hottest years, hottest average temperatures. It's impacting all of us.
It's hard to imagine a dimension of human health that climate change doesn't touch. It deepens poverty. It threatens our food and water supply. It tears people from their homes. It makes large parts of the world uninhabitable. If you care about climate change, you have to care about health. And if you care about health, you have to care about climate change.
As a pediatrician, my job is not only to take care of the children that I'm seeing in my practice, but also to advocate for a healthy environment for the children I'm taking care of. The health effects of climate change disproportionately affect children, people of color, people living in poverty, the elderly, people living with chronic disease. And as climate change worsens, the health outcomes caused by climate change in these populations will worsen as well.
There's been a coalition of hospital systems all around the world working to address the environmental footprint, especially the climate footprint of healthcare, so that the mission of healthcare is actually expanding to go beyond treating individual patients to supporting healthier communities and healthier planet.
I think this is where we have the real opportunity of creating public-private partnerships. And it's that synergy that I think will help us to really get at this problem and work on it together towards resolutions.
I truly believe that if our policymakers and the public were able to understand better that climate change is an urgent human health issue, we'd be able to get to where we need to be to act on climate as a society.
We need to take steps because this is impacting all of our health.
Not everybody cares about energy. Not everybody cares about climate change, but everybody cares about health. It's personal.
Climate change is fundamentally a global health issue.
It's about health.
It's all about health.
It's about health, and we have the power to change the dynamic to advocate for health on behalf of all people.
Good afternoon. So have any of you noticed how strange the weather has been lately? We just come through 3 of the hottest years on record. We just emerged from a major drought. And in fact, this last year in the American West was the second wettest in recorded history. So we're now in a phase where climate change has become a reality of our daily lives. And what I'm going to describe to you today are some pathways for getting down off the up-escalator of climate change. And it's critical that we engage in this collectively. This is a story that really links energy, the environment, society, and climate together. And I'm going to start by describing the link between society and climate. So we've been very fortunate to establish our cities, our agriculture, our industry in a period of very stable climate. And of course, the weather bounces around the Mediterranean climate that we have here in the American West and the climates under which people have set up their cities and their agriculture and their industries all over the world. And that stability has lasted for literally thousands of years. Now imagine what would happen if suddenly the climate changed underneath you. And that's the situation that we're facing now. None of the students in our classes have grown up in a normal climate. They've been growing up in a situation where we have much more rapid heat waves occurring much more frequently, really dramatic flooding events that have greatly accelerated over the last 50 years, dramatic droughts like the one we just emerged from, and also increased sea level rise. Imagine you're the poor pedestrian here on the Embarcadero here in San Francisco dealing with a combination of a king tide, rising sea level, and a winter storm. So what's driving this climate change is something that many of us here at Berkeley have been studying rather intensively. And we're now very confident that humankind is the primary responsible agent for the change that we've been observing in our own lifetimes. And there are a few key culprits that I want to call out. The first is black carbon and carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide, so shown by the smokestacks in these pictures, is the main culprit, but black carbon that comes from just ordinary diesel combustion is also a major agent of climate change. And I illustrated this showing a particularly intrepid runner from a recent marathon in Beijing wearing what was apparently appropriate personal protection gear, given the level of smog in that city. So black carbon contributes significantly to smog as well. And it also contributes to health problems as well as to global warming. My group at Berkeley has now directly shown the link between carbon dioxide and the greenhouse effect. As shown in this figure, the blue is the carbon dioxide and the orange is the forcing or the greenhouse effect. And as you can see, the forcing increases in lockstep with the carbon dioxide. So the two are very closely linked. This is the first time this direct linkage has been shown from observations. We've also begun looking at the effects of methane. Methane is another very important greenhouse gas, about 30 times more effective than CO2. And we've just now concluded our work to show the direct linkage between methane and the greenhouse effect. So this is a time series or a plot of the growth in the greenhouse effect or warming due to methane with time. And it shows how that warming has increased rapidly since the introduction of fracking. So how do we get off this path that we're on? We're currently on a straight trajectory that connects increased emissions and increased temperature. And this is a figure from the last Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, in which many of us participated, that shows that direct one-to-one correspondence between increased emissions and increased temperature. So we have to slow down our path down this curve, because it's a very straight trajectory toward a much warmer and much stranger climate. Well, I'm happy to say that there are success stories. So if you look at Los Angeles, the butt of jokes, right? So you can get smog in a can. This was true of Los Angeles in the 1970s, but if you fast forward to today, it is a much cleaner environment. And this has to do with both an improvement in the air quality and also a reduction in the particulates that cause global warming and serious human health issues. So this is a win-win improvement for the city of Los Angeles and for other cities that have undertaken really serious efforts to control their air quality and their greenhouse gases at the same time. We are fortunate to have a state governor, Governor Brown, who's very serious about reducing the effects of climate change. This is a meeting that we had with him recently in which he really took on the duties as governor and as the leader of the largest virtual nation that went to the Paris Accords to try to reduce the agents that drive global warming. And I think thanks to this kind of initiative, we can build a world that both embodies the sustainability that we think is so critical to human life and also embodies the diversity that we hold as a critical value. Thank you very much.
If you were to go invent a carbon capture machine, you couldn't invent a better machine than a tree in terms of mitigation of climate change.
David Cleaves is climate change advisor for the U.S. Forestry Service. He says trees provide at least part of the solution to climate change.
First of all, trees capture carbon from the atmosphere, capture carbon dioxide, convert it to carbon in the tree, and store it there for hundreds of years. And even if a tree is turned into a wood product, that carbon remains stored there for many, many years, many decades, even hundreds of years more.
Cleaves admits his bias toward trees, but he's not alone. 5 years ago, the United Nations initiated a program at the Climate Change Conference for reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, now called REDD+. One of the solutions being discussed is a pay-for-performance mechanism. The Forestry Service's Shira Yaffe explains.
Where countries will be paid for their efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from their forest lands. And that's in the process of being negotiated, and that's really focused on developing countries.
South America and Africa have had the highest rate of deforestation, losing more than 7 million hectares of forest annually between 2000 and 2010. Such deforestation, says John Watkin of Conservation International, has ramifications well beyond its borders.
The Congo Basin is responsible for the rainfall that results in Lake Victoria receiving 70% of its water directly from rain onto it. Lake Victoria is the most thunderous area in the world. It's one of the sources of the Nile. Now, if the deforestation is extrapolated for the Congo Basin throughout DRC and the other countries, we will see a reduction in rainfall onto Lake Victoria, which will result in a reduction in rainfall onto the lake and the flow of the Nile out. That's going to have significant ramifications for all the countries north up towards the Mediterranean.
According to Conservation International, almost 60% of the world's forests are in developing countries. But 13 million hectares of forest are cleared each year for agriculture, ranching, logging, and mining. Efforts like Africa's Green Belt movement have helped improve deforestation rates with an emphasis on tree planting and sustainable farming. Other programs like the U.S. Forestry Service seek to put a value on trees. Matthew Edwardson is the Africa Program Coordinator with the U.S. Forestry Service.
In Central Africa, for example, we're working very closely in Gabon with the Gabonese government to basically help them inventory their national forest and really understand what they have. And that is the fundamental behind allowing for those countries to enter into these carbon market schemes which are being developed, because you have to know what you have before you can actually go forward and sell it.
Edwardson says the U.S. Forestry Service is working hard to adapt its forest management to a changing climate domestically as well as abroad.
And that's what we're, also trying to help individuals understand in Africa is, given, the increase in temperature in certain areas of, the Albertine Rift area of, Rwanda, Uganda, etc., what's going to happen to agricultural production systems? Will maize grow at a certain, level? And if it will not grow there, where are people going to move? And how do you adapt the management of a protected area to understand those likely movements of people? So helping policy and decision makers better understand that.
So while deforestation affects climate change, a warmer climate, or a colder climate for that matter, affects the forest.
We know that the forests themselves, the ones that are here, are evolving and moving basically northward and up the slopes because the warmer temperatures and everything goes along with it are chasing them. Our fires have gone up to about double the rate. The insect and disease problems because of the drought-induced stress and the susceptibility to insect and disease damage has gone up by an order of 3 just in the last 15 years. So we have many more acres that have been disturbed that need to be rapidly regenerated.
Because of replanting efforts, the net loss of trees has slowed. Asia has actually increased its forest cover by more than 2 million hectares annually for the past 10 years. Nigeria has one of the worst deforestation rates in the world, but the UN Food and Agriculture Organization says it is Brazil that loses the most forest land each year, more than 2.5 million hectares annually. Rebecca Ward, VOA News.